Welcome to Ask Lee Wednesdays. Alright, so this is the segment where you can ask any question you want to regarding magic and spirituality and demonology, witchcraft, the occult, etc., etc. And I will answer it in this segment. So if you have a question, put it in the comments below and I will add it to the list. The list is growing nicely, thank you everybody. So I think I'm going to have to try and get through a few more than usual during one of these shows. Alright, so let's get into that. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okay, so let's see. First question. Let me just get to the question over here. It is from Godkingcthulu. Would you give your advice on scrying in general and or particularly water bowl scrying? Okay, so scrying is a method of divination, and there are various ways that you can do scrying. Or various tools you can use for scrying. All of the processes you take, no matter what the tool is usually the same process. But you can use a dark mirror, you can use a normal mirror, you can use a candle flame or a fire, and you can use a crystal ball, you can use an obsidian disc, you can take the clock faces on a grandfather clock, for instance, and it's kind of slightly concave or convex depending on which way you're looking at it. If you paint the convex side, so if you're looking at it like that, so there's the bent side, that's the part you would look at if you were looking at the clock. So this is the convex side and this is the concave side. So what you do is you paint the convex side. I hope I've got my convex and concave correctly here, so that the mirror, well, the clock face sort of bends in when you're looking at it. All right, you can actually do it both ways. You can experiment with it, but what you might find is it's easier to gaze into the concave side. So you would paint the convex side black, the back of it, and then you would use that for gazing. You can use an obsidian mirror. The obsidian mirror was very popular with John Dee and the Enochian magic. So a lot of people who practice Enochian magic usually refer to a obsidian mirror. Obsidian mirror obsidian's a stone. It's a shiny black stone, and you usually get a disc and you use that to gaze in. So anyway, so you've got all these things you can use. What you're trying to aim for is something that you can gaze into the middle of. So if you were using a black mirror, you would gaze into the middle of the mirror. If you were using a candle flame, you would gaze into the center of the candle flame, the hottest part of the flame. And you're not staring, you are gazing. And the difference there is when you're staring, you are looking at a fixed point, and focusing on that fixed point. When you're gazing, you let your eyes kind of wander, kind of open up, and you relax your eyes. So instead of staring at a fixed point, you relax your eyes so that you almost look through it. People always describe this process as looking beyond the point. So if you were to, okay, I've got a tablet here, right? I could use this for gazing. Let me just switch it off. There. And if you make it all shiny, because it's a bit dusty at the moment. But there you go. Let me just try and get if it was black, okay. Let's just do that. Maybe that'll work. No, that's not working. Okay, but anyway, I think you get the idea. So I could use this as a scrying device. because it's black. So if I were to gaze at it, I can see my reflection in it, but it's not like a normal mirror. And I can then, you look at a point. So if you were using a mirror, okay, you would have the mirror in front of you, you would see the reflection of your face, and this is a dark mirror, so it's not a normal mirror. You can use a normal mirror. I'm going back and forth here, aren't I? You can use a normal mirror, but that's often used more for ancestral type work. That's a bit different. For scrying purposes, and especially when you're beginning, and if you're going to use a mirror, I would especially recommend just using a dark mirror for this process. So you have your mirror, you are gazing at it, so you might pick a point, like between your eyes, for instance. And then you find that you're staring, you are fixedly staring on that point. And what you do is you just relax your eyes so that everything becomes unfocused. And this is looking beyond the point. So that's what you do. You relax your eyes, you gaze, things become unfocused. And then what happens is you will find that the image that you see disappears. Now this can be related to something that happens with the eye and the, I can't remember the actual process, and there's a term for it as well. But there's a process that happens with the eye where if you are focusing on something, it goes out of your vision, out of your focus, and you start focusing on things surrounding it. Could be related to that, but being a spiritual magical practice, we're just going to say what happens is it disappears. So if you can see your image, your face in the mirror, and it's blurred because your eyes are unfocused, at some point what you're going to find is that's all going to disappear and it's going to become blank, and you carry on. Then what usually happens is you will start to see visions, and some people report that they hear a trumpet sound or a bell or a chime or something before the visions start. Not everybody has that. Some people report, and this usually happens to me, it's like a swirling mist starts to come out. Again, that could be something that happens physically with the eye, but you'll see like a swirling mist, or it becomes kind of misty. There's a white type of misty type of apparition that comes out of the mirror, and then you'll start seeing visions. Now when I say you'll see visions, this is going to differ with everybody, and it depends if you have pronounced clairvoyance or not. If you are a clairvoyant, you're probably going to start seeing images in a clairvoyant manner. But what you might also experience, especially if you're not clairvoyant, is impressions, ideas, thoughts. You could even, if you're, is it clairaudient? There we go, clairaudient. I'm trying to get all my clairs together here. If you're clairaudient, you may hear sound. You may hear somebody talking to you, or you may hear a word or something. So what you're doing, you're engaging all of your psychic senses, and how or what you see will depend on those psychic senses. So don't think that just because everybody says that when you're scrying you are going to see images, it doesn't always happen that way. It's about using a method to go into a trance state, and through that trance state you then start to experience images, you start to experience impressions, thoughts, ideas, things. It's a divination method for this reason. Now when you go into doing the divination method, when you go into scrying, what you can do is ask a question beforehand and hold that question in your mind as you are progressing through the scrying practice. And as you're doing that, what you then may find is you get answers to that question. The other thing that could happen is that you may not see anything, you may not get anything from the scrying, but when you go to sleep, you'll dream. It's just an extension of the actual scrying process. But water I didn't mention water bowl because it was specifically asked about water bowl scrying, so I wanted to leave that at the end. So water bowl scrying is a method I prefer. I do prefer using the water. So what you can do is you can take something which is black. I actually have just a normal ceramic bowl which is black, completely black, and I use that. You can use a cauldron. You can use anything which has a dark surface, and then what you do is you put water in it and you put it down on the floor and you sit in front of it and you just gaze at it. And the reason I like this method is you aren't seeing your own reflection on the surface. But what happens is after a while it kind of becomes a portal. So it's almost like this black hole starts forming on the floor that you're sitting in front of, and through that you can then journey into that portal. You can go into the lower world or the upper world, middle world, wherever you want to go. You can actually journey to get your answers. So this is a bit beyond the normal scrying and see a vision thing. This is actually journeying, going to places in order to get answers and then coming back with the answers. But that's the reason I like the water, using water scrying, is because as you're sitting in front of it and you've been gazing at it for a while, then what happens is it becomes like this black hole in the ground, which can be used as a doorway. And you can do this with black mirror. You can do it with candle flame. Candle flame is actually a good one if you're gazing into the center of the candle, the hottest point. At some stage you can make that into a doorway that you can step through and you can journey. So scrying itself can extend beyond just a divination tool, in the manner of you are getting the results from the tool itself. You can use the tool to actually go places in order to get answers and bring those answers back. So yeah, with water bowl scrying or water scrying, you can experiment with different things, with different mediums. I mean, they're all water, so they're not really different mediums. But you can use tap water, you can use spring water, you can use rainwater, you can use seawater, you can use river water, and try all of these different types of waters, because what you'll probably find is you'll get different results from different types of water, because the water holds energy very well, which is why we actually use water a lot when we're doing offerings. You know, ancestor altar, whatever altar you've got, we usually suggest get a glass of water and a candle. That's it. If you want to add stuff as you go, that's fine, but that's the basics. A glass of water and candle. The glass of water, because it holds energy and very well. You know, we've seen that with Dr. Emoto. I've forgotten his full name. The guy that took the photos of water. He froze the water. He added an intention, so he kind of put hate into a glass of water, and we've put love into another glass of water, and then he froze them and he took pictures of the crystalline formations, and you could see the difference between the intentions because the water holds the energy. So when you're doing water scrying, what you're doing is you can put your intention of the work you want to do or the question you want answers to into the water. But if you're using water from a river, you may get different results than if you're using tap water, because it comes with an energy to begin with. So you may find that if you have a good relationship with the spirits of the river, which is close by, then you'll get the intention of the spirits in your scrying practice as well. So good to experiment with all the different things. What you can also do is make a tea. You can experiment if you make a mugwort tea, but not to drink. It's actually good if you actually want to experiment with that as well, is to drink the mugwort tea before doing the scrying, because it helps with the scrying itself. But make the tea and use that as the the body of water which you're using to scry. Chamomile tea, whatever tea, you can experiment with different teas, for instance. You can also put ink into the water, which is quite cool, because as you drop the ink in, you kind of swirl it a little first, let it swirl around, and then drop the ink in, and it follows the swirl, and it starts creating patterns which interact with the subconscious mind and allows the process to take a different direction. You can use blood. If you prick your finger and you drop a couple drops of blood into the water, it also adds your energy to it as well. So there's a lot of things you can actually do with water scrying, and you can in many cases do a lot of this with a black mirror scrying, for instance. You can make a fluid condenser and you can use that on the back of the mirror. So there's a lot of things you can do with that, but I think water scrying is extremely versatile, and there's a lot of different things, a lot of different ways you can do it and experiment with. So yeah, I think that covers that one anyway. Okay, let me get to the next question, which is this one. It's from Stephane levallois. I think I said that right, not sure. Does Jesus work with the devil? And also, I think Marvas is better than Raphael. And do I think the same thing? Alright, so the first question, does Jesus work with the devil? This is a difficult question to ask from a broad perspective, because first of all we have to consider what the devil is from a theosophical and from a folkloric point of view. Theosophically, if we were looking at the Christian devil, which then gets related to Lucifer and Satan. If we're looking from a folkloric point of view, then we're thinking of the horn god. On the one side, it's the evil spirit that is coming after you and it's going to destroy your life. On the folkloric side, it's the one that we worship. It's the father god, the horn god. So in that respect, it becomes a bit difficult to determine whether Jesus would work with the devil. But if we look at it from the folkloric perspective, then we can also consider the devil in that sense to be Lucifer, in which case Lucifer is the morning star, the light bringer, the bringer of gnosis and knowledge, the illuminator of the path, and in that regard Jesus is Lucifer. Jesus is a light bringer. So in a sense, and if you take it in that direction, we could say that Jesus Christ is the devil. Of course, a lot of people are going to disagree with that, depending on their own perspective. But I think you get where I'm trying to go with this, is that depending on how you interpret certain things, we can equate one thing with another. If you interpret it a different way, you can't equate them. But in my mind, the devil is Lucifer. Therefore, in one aspect at least, the devil encompasses many, many, many aspects. But in one aspect, the devil is Lucifer and is therefore the light bringer, the bringer of knowledge, and so was Christ. So yes, I would say they can, depending on personal perspective. And do I think Marvas is better than Raphael? I don't think either are better than, or one is better than the other, really. I don't personally like working with angels. It's just my own personal preference. A lot of people do. The archangels are slightly different, but the archangels, for me, represent more of a particular force. And Raphael would be air, would be the element of air and the element of love, but also the element of healing, of bringing healing. So in that regard, somebody may call Raphael for healing purposes, but the other side of this is that Raphael holds the sword, and the sword can cut both ways. It strikes through the air and splits it. So you can use that in regards to removing an ailment, cutting that ailment out, whether it's cancer or an illness which needs to be removed from the body. So that in a sense is a healing method. But at the same time, Marbas can do that as well. Marbas looks very particularly at the mechanics of things, how the disease or the illness got into the body, what it's specifically doing to the body, and therefore working around that in order to remove it and then repair the body. So Marbas gets quite technical about things, quite mechanical about things. So, I think if we were to look at this from the perspective of demons versus angels, the angelic forces would be very much surrounding the entirety of it, the force, the element of it. Whereas when you're looking at the demonic forces, they get very particular. So Marbas would be that mechanical type of interaction with an illness, or creating an illness, or curing an illness. Whereas if you were looking at Varine, Varine is very much associated with herbal magic. So it's doing the same thing, but it's taking a completely different approach to the application of it. So I don't think either would be better or worse than the other. It again becomes a preference of who you prefer to work with. And if two demons do exactly the same thing, you're going to have a preference with which one you actually want to work with, which one you feel more comfortable with. And it comes down to the same thing as working with demons or angels. What do you feel more comfortable with? It's got nothing to do with one is better than the other, really. Okay, let me just check what the next one is. As I said, I need to do a few more. Okay, this one shouldn't be too long. It's from Priyanka Matin. Can you please do one on Shadowmancy? Also would like to know, what do they actually mean by selling the soul? Thank you for making it easier for others to gain some proper knowledge. You are doing great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, Shadowmancy isn't something I do. And I went to go and have a look for Shadowmancy just to see what get other people's perspectives on it, and all it comes up with is gaming stuff. So I'm going to give you my idea and interpretation of what Shadowmancy is. So it is a mancy, therefore it is a method of divination. It is possible this is extended beyond just divination, as has necromancy. Necromancy, because it's a mancy and therefore it's supposed to just be a divination method, has extended to a lot of things and regarding everything about working with the dead. But Shadowmancy itself would actually be a scrying method, which we've been speaking about at the beginning of this show. It's a form of gazing, and which allows you to puts you into a trance state in order for you to become receptive to your psychic senses and get answers to questions that you're looking for. In this case, what you're doing is you are gazing at shadows. Now, the interesting thing with Shadowmancy is that it's considered to be, or the actual gazing at shadows is considered to be putting you between spaces. It's a liminal practice. I think I can say liminal practice. I think that's a thing. But it puts you in a liminal space. So it puts you between worlds. Now, the reason for this is because you have your shadow and your light. And what you're doing is you're gazing at the shadow, which puts you between the shadow and the light, and it puts you into that liminal space. And there's many many different liminal spaces we can look at. Standing in a doorway is a liminal space because you've got one foot in one room and another foot in another room, and you're in between them. So you're neither in one room or the other. Standing on the bank of a river and having one foot in the water and one foot on the bank is being in a liminal space. Standing, coming back to shadows, standing at the edge of a tree, or the shadows that are being cast by a tree, so the one foot's in the shadow and one foot's in the light, that's standing in a liminal space. So when we're doing Shadowmancy, it's very much about putting yourself in that liminal space and using the shadows themselves and the movements of the shadows, because the shadows don't stay still, they move, in order to get yourself into a trance state and access those psychic senses and get the answers. So can be considered a scrying method, I'd say. The other one also would like to know, what do they actually mean by selling the soul? What they mean is selling your soul to a spirit, and therefore you are contractually bound to that spirit. I don't believe in selling souls. I don't think that any spirit worth their salt, any god, goddess, demon, angel, whatever, would want to purchase your soul. There's no reason for it. They have no reason for it. So I think it's just a Hollywood thing. You know, people have watched movies. Somebody came up with this idea of selling the soul. It's rooted somewhere in history. You know, working with the crossroads spirits and things like that, which then developed into you are selling your soul to the devil at the crossroads. It's I think some Christian perspective came into it, and because they considered working with the crossroads demon to be a bad thing, you are then selling your soul to the devil. But you know, contractually being bound to a spirit so that when you die or you have 10 years and then they'll come and take your soul and all that rubbish, that's all Hollywood stuff, if you ask me. So I don't go for this whole selling your soul thing. I think it's ridiculous. And it's different to creating pacts. Even if you're creating a pact, you are creating a contract between you and a spirit, and that's usually for a period of time, and when that thing has been attained or you've accomplished your task, what you promised the spirit, then that contract comes to an end. It's not you don't sell your soul to the spirit, you just make a contract to give something in order to get something. And we do that anyway through normal work. If you're building a relationship with a spirit, you're usually giving them something. You sit down and you give them worship, or you do a dedication. You may light some incense and light a candle. You may give them a blood offering. Whatever it is, you are giving them something, and you are getting something in return. So just building that relationship is the same thing as creating a pact, but people like to enter pacts. I don't do it myself. That's just me. Alright, so that's a long one for today, so I'm going to end it here, and I'll see you next week for more information and more stuff. Okay, have a good one until then. Cheers for now. Bye bye.